Caleb, welcome. Thank you for jumping on. How you doing?
I am doing well. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing really well, man. You've done some really cool things. And I'd love to hear, how did you first get introduced to sales? How did this journey start for you?
Oh, oh, first finding sales. Um, yeah, after a series of failures was failures is a strong word. After a series of attempts that didn't get what I wanted of starting different online businesses, such as drop shipping, even an agency, I'd taken the dollars that I had and invested it into what I felt would kind of be my savings grace, which was a program about buying and selling businesses, mergers and acquisitions. And it was the guy that sold me into that took a personal interest or liking to me just because I was really young at the time, and he saw that I had hunger, tenacious, and just a lot of work ethic. And so he said, "Hey, this business buying stuff is great, but like what you should really learn how to do is you're gonna have to learn how to sell. You're gonna have to learn how to communicate." And I just remember from that call being, um, a good sales call is like a good round of therapy or like a good self-actualization. Send you right up Maslow's hierarchy of needs really quick. And so I just remember that call being so enlightening for me or eye-opening that I figured that maybe he knew what he was talking about. And that was kind of the beginning of it. He took me under his wing and I started doing cold calling, and he helped me find my first like position and kind of set me up. And I was doing my initial skill, getting my initial skills and all of that. And so that's how I found it. It wasn't really by like sales is what I want to do. The more that I'd learned about sales as a career once I'd gotten into it, the more I kind of understood that, oh, I think this is actually something. But yeah, I just was so unaware of how the business and world worked at the time that I was just like, well, why don't I just follow this guy? He says I should learn how to sell. I should be good on the phones. And so I said, sure, let's do it.
So, what was your first offer? What was your first product that you were selling?
So cold calling, actually, thinking back on it, there was actually other things that I sold in there, but cold calling was the first thing because I was told by him that all the greats, they started their sales career by doing cold calling, and what was it? Cold calling teaches you EQ, how to really, because on a cold call you've got what you're saying and how you're saying it, and that's it. It's not like the Zoom video stuff where you have like your presence and your body language and all these other things. So it was just really getting good at the bare bones basics. And the program taught you how to buy and sell businesses, and the best way to find them was to just call on them. And so that's what I started doing, was calling on them. Not for me to buy. I was really intimidated by the thought of buying one at the time. I later grew to have some confidence and even attempted it, but in the beginning, I was just so overwhelmed by everything that he said, "Hey, why don't you cold call for me? I can find you somebody who needs deals, and if you find companies, I'll find somebody, and then when a deal closes, we all get paid." And so I said, "That sounds like a fair engagement." And so yeah, that's what I did. Started cold calling. That was kind of like the first offer. Wasn't really an offer. In hindsight, I realized that I was just free labor for a pay-per-lead agency. Um, but I hadn't realized that. I didn't realize that till hindsight, that I was just free labor for a pay-per-lead agency. I did get paid. I did find a lot of businesses. I got really good at it, and I made some money off of it. But it was later after that I eventually found myself um, into like a real kind of like high ticket situation.
So, how long were you doing the cold calling before you pivoted into your first quote unquote real high ticket offer?
The cold calling never actually stopped. I was still in high school at the time, so I'd pretty much gone from being in school to summer break, and so I just had more time, really, and so that's where I just needed more things to do with it, and that's where I figured, well, why don't I supplement this with like an actual sales position? I'd found the founder on school. I bought Consulting Accelerator way back when, and um, I just remember being one of the earlier members on school. He was on there, and he kind of had a company, an interesting idea, and I messaged him, and I was like, I knew high finance and I knew like business buying. And so I figured, well, why don't I stay in that vein? Because I really like it and I feel like it would serve me. And so I stayed in that vertical and um, found this company, raises.com is what it was called. It still exists to this day. It was very different looking way back when I had found it. And I found myself in there as an appointment setter. He didn't think he had really a full need for a closer, but there was some room for an appointment setter. And so I started setting for him. And the my like mentor at the time. The guy that had sold me to the M&A program was like probably my closest friend and confidant during that, because he kind of understood how sales as an industry worked. He, former sales sniper, sales rep. If you're watching this, you know who you are. And I didn't quite know how to approach these things or do any closing or really sales. So I think he negotiated my whole like structure and all that stuff for me. I brought him into the meeting, and he was still had really close ties. He loved the world of high finance. That's the one thing we really broke down on. We really got together on. Is he wanted to do business buying just about as badly as I did. We believed in the vision and mission and what it was possible of doing and becoming. And so he really liked that I was involved in this stuff, because he couldn't be there with his time and participation. So while he wasn't there with his time, I was. And so I could share a lot of the insights both ways. But yeah, I was young, really gullible, very impressionable. Cold calling was one of the most painful, like 6 months of that, 7 months of that, just straight. I hadn't really fully found myself as a person yet, and I just remember that taking a toll on my spirit and being and who I was. So yeah, that was.
Because how old were you when you started to cold call?
Oh, honestly, like I don't know if I was 17. I might have been 16 or 17 at the time that I was doing it. So like I wasn't even really fully developed. Yeah, I was like at that age. You don't even have like a fully developed sense of self. So I was already like fragile ego from like being like still a high school kid. And just that in the background, just eating away, being told no all day. Now, mind you, cold calling for buying businesses is not as aggressive as other forms of cold calling. I will say there's definitely things that are harder, more aggressive to sell than, hey, do you want to buy it? Do you want to sell your company? But just I have a video inside of the archives of my YouTube of like me cold calling. It was an hour straight of me, just a screen recording of me doing my dials. And I remember between my calls, just like horrible anxiety in my mind of like, oh, like actual, like that was a conversation, like terrible, terrible, terrible. My intro to sales, actually, you talk about how I found it. I bought a Sam Evans Consulting Accelerator. I bought Sam Evans Consulting Accelerator, but like a couple of years prior, I had pirated it, and that's where I went through his training. And I remember talking about him being in sales. You have to put people into pain to inspire people to change. I just remember being so uncomfortable with the fact of putting somebody into pain. I really wasn't it really wasn't that hard driving of an individual. So, yeah, that was
Okay.
That was a chapter.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at such an impressionable age, that would have really shaped you. And that makes a lot of sense, leading you down the route that you went. When you have that kind of stuff happening at 16, 17 years old, it really just starts to shape the man that you've become.
Yeah, I remember very distinctly when I finally could stop. Just there was an ease in the back of my mind, like a release of just, I don't take it back one bit, because there's so many things that I learned cold calling about how to communicate that very much shape, as you say, shape how I communicate now, in just my tonality, my delivery, my certainty, my ability to kind of read and understand people and see between the lines, that you can tell who's really got it and who doesn't based off of how much time they've spent on the phones. Because once more, when all you've got is how you say things and what you're saying, you get really good at communicating messages in compelling ways. And so, yeah, I'm a pretty darn good setter. If I know how to keep people on the phone, I've got a good tone. At least I figured that out. I like to believe that I have.
And how long were you doing the setting gig for? Like, what did that evolve into?
So that was, I was with Raises for, I know that it was over, it might have been a year and a half. I can't recall exactly when I kind of started and ended there. I don't know how long I was setting before I transitioned into closing, but I very distinctly remembered the day that I switched into closing, because there was a point that I'd put up a bunch of appointments for the closer founder, and man, was he not a salesperson. And I just remember being so fed up at the fact that like my income was in the hands of a guy that I had no confidence in to close. And I just remember taking the meeting and being like, I told him like, hey, so this has been good, but I think I'm going to try closing. And he's like, well, why is that? Well, I don't know. You don't seem to be closing, and I don't make money when you don't. And so it's like, I gotta get paid. I gotta make money with this somehow. So instead of wishing on a miracle that, you'll bring one of these guys over the line, I'm gonna just take a stab at it. And so, I still remember the first deal that I closed. It was this guy, Stuart. It was like the most like awkward, kind of soft sales call I think I had ever had. But he was a good guy. He came through and he bought. He was a paid in full. But I'd negotiated. I was the first closer for this account for raises, and I remember negotiating really well. I had just a really good working relationship with the guy, with the founder. Natu, shout out to Natu if you're watching this, you're a G. Um, yeah, Natu is a character. For context, this is a like 6.5 foot tall Nigerian that can squat 850 pounds and is stronger than Arnold Schwarzenegger was in his peak, completely natural without steroids. This guy is just a tank of a human being. Um, Most consistent and persistent guy that I've ever met, I will say. I've not met anybody that's more consistent than he is. Very humble, non-flashy, and I really admire just how good he was as a founder, as an offer owner. He always paid on time. He always paid, he might not have liked paying, but he always did the right thing. He had really good virtues and values. That's something that I really appreciated. I don't think I valued it as much as the time, but spend enough time in this high ticket world, you'll see that, it's really nice to have someone that you can actually lean on, trust. So, but because I was the first closer and there wasn't like incredibly high earnings and all that stuff, and he needed to like really pioneer his sales process, I said, hey, I'm going to do 25% commissions for like my first 16 sales or something like that. I can't recall if it was 6 or 16. This was not a high volume account. 25% commissions on a 10K product, mind you. And so I just remember that first commission check of the guy that I closed for 2,500 coming through. He was a 10K PIF. That was a really nice day. That was like the first like hit of like, oh, wow, one phone call and 2,500 bucks. I remember when he paid it, 7-day payout cycle too. He always paid a week later. So it was like beautiful. I didn't realize how good I had it. And then I've met people that are net 30, net 45, net 60, getting their commissions stiffed. It's like, that was nice what I had. So those were my romantic beginnings in the world of high ticket. It was good.
They let you in easy. You
Yeah.
got in on a gentle, nice and gentle to you.
Yeah. No, and then after that, things. I've been on so many different offers now in different places as a consultant and as a closer that you just kind of become a little bit jaded to the space. I've met plenty of people too that you see them with like the I think it's the 1,000-yard stare is the meme where there's just the soldier with the helmet on. It's a lot of high ticket guys right now. Just like, oh wow, okay, so. But yeah, no, that was good. It was 25% for like my first 6 or 16, I can't recall, and then we negotiated it down to 16%. And then after being there for a little over, I can't recall if it was a year and a half. I parted ways. I was just like, there wasn't enough growth there. I need to really test myself, expand my horizons. The offer wasn't really going anyplace, so glad to go do something else.
And then where did that lead you into next? Because I know you've done a few different offers since then, but where did that take you down? Like, where did you evolve?
Um, like it's funny. I thought about my story recently. I'd gone to a sales training company, but actually, I think before the sales training company, I attempted to sell marketing services. I became the primary I had a friend that did recruitment and placement, and so I got placed into people that had bought this done-for-you marketing agency program, and I was like underexperienced. I knew sales, but like I was not like a closer or like really well built by any means to do it. And God, yeah, I skated the whole recruitment process, got put in the top of the pipeline, and got plugged into 2 marketing agencies, both of them serving e-commerce stores, following this kind of like done-for-you marketing agency protocol. And I just remember getting served. I was like not a good guy. I'd really not developed the whole skills and like strength to how to do it. So I got served big time. And I just remember being like on the inbound calendar for both of these. These are people that had paid like, this is pre-COVID, mind you. So I remember these people had paid like 30K, 25, 30K for done for you agency in a box, closer, ads, everything, fulfillment team taken care of. And I was hired as a closer. And I just remember I actually left the offers because I realized how much money I was costing these people. And I was like, look, I don't believe in my ability to close these people right now. So I'm going to do you a favor by backing out of this because you need someone that can actually come in and like stick around. And they really didn't like it that I was leaving because they really did like me. And I tried to be like a good and well communicative person. But they had said that they had people that had hired prior that just kind of ghosted, went MIA, and so it was really hard to kind of tell them no. But I just knew I kind of need to step back, and so I can't recall if that was pre-raises or post-raises, but there was a chapter of that in there somewhere. That was some scarring around my whole sales ability. So I think I definitely had a very negative first impression of sales, all in all. After like the cold calling was like, kick to the face, all this stuff, and then I found out kind of had like I had a good offer, but still was overcoming, the bad kind of initial conditions. I think immediately after raises was a sales training company, sales coaching training, showing people how to get into the world of high ticket sales, and I soared there. That was like, I had no problem getting commitments, using all the tactics and things that I really kind of training and was developing on. And yeah, that was just a really, really fun time selling for that. The problem was, is just people didn't have the money. I was a commitment machine. I got people. I remember I walked a guy through 4 loan applications once on the phone to try to get the money for this. Came up short. But I just remember being proud of the fact that I ran them around for 4. I remember people on the team asking me, hey, I actually had somebody apply for an Amex and pay for the program. I had someone go get a personal loan to pay for the program. I remember someone asking me, hey, man, how do you do that? I sent them a call recording and be doing, hey, this is me walking somebody through 4 loan applications in case you're curious. And I think that caused tension with the business owner because I was really good at like this whole commitment financing thing. And I was just, he didn't like the fact that I don't think he just liked he couldn't understand how I was selling and communicating the way that I did. It worked, but I don't think it made sense to him, because I felt like I was really soaring on a much deeper level in someone's psyche of how to communicate and sell. And that was something that just kind of put him off. And so we ran into tensions. And he's like, you can change and sell the way that we sell, or, we're going to have to figure something out. And so I took the figure something else out route, because when you're commission only, it's like getting dropped in the woods, and it's like, hey, here's tools that you don't know how to use. You got to use them to go forage. And so I was like, I got to use what I know how to use. There's no floor to this. There's no base pay to this. So I'm not going to like take a bet on this sales methodology I don't get and understand. And so, yeah.
And who was that? What sales training company did you sell for?
I don't want to. Well, I don't want to name any names or throw anybody under the bus, but it starts with it has the word circle in it, and it has nothing to do with NEPQ. This is a small guy. I think he's changed his whole business model now. Ironically, one of our members, one of my mentees now, a couple years later, had actually become his sales consultant briefly. So if you connect the dots deeply enough, you might be able to figure out who it is. So, but yeah, I don't want to name any names for that sake. He's still a good person. I respect him as a business owner because he's a hustler and he's hard. But that sales training was like, it was a good program, but by no means was it a technically dense. Like this was just like, hey, Cole Gordon competitor, pretty much. This is what it was, hopping in on that whole trend in market. Now there's a gazillion of them become a remote closer because, yeah.
It was the thing. Everyone wanted to get in. Everyone wanted to be a remote closer.
That was the heyday. Like we had Cole Gordon, a colleague of mine was doing it. We had this guy that was doing it. Cole was like the predominant market leader. I remember like looking through his whole webinar, and that was the whole thing made sense. Buying RCA and the whole argument that he made. That was a very different time. That was like, yeah, the internet marketing space was just so different then. Yeah, that was also like, prior to that was like drop shipping. There was drop shipping days, SMMA days, and then like remote closing was like, I just remember those 3. It was like bam, bam, bam. It was like 15, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18. And now everything's gotten, I feel like, way more technically advanced. I think that was before a bunch of done for you stuff as well, or maybe I just wasn't that deep in the space. But yeah, I miss that. I really do miss that. Back before people were so aware to all the sales tactics and stuff, and the FCC was cracking down on people as hard as they are. Those were the days. That was back when Alex Becker was running HCOM, for those of you guys that know. So, yeah.
Back in the wild, wild west, mate.
Yeah. I think Jeremy didn't even have 100,000 subs back then. I think he was still like a no-name under the radar. He was like this trainer. He was not as prolific as he is now. There was no Andy Elliott. For those of you guys who remember that there was a time before Andy Elliott was a thing.
So what happened? Like, where did you go from when you were selling on the sales training, right? You had your disagreements. You decided to part your ways. What was in for you next? Like, where'd you go?
It's a good question. I can't remember the offer that immediately came after sales training. I know which one that I remember, but I definitely know there were others in between. But the next one that was a bit more prolific was I want to deliver the names of these because almost every offer that I've been a part of, at some point I left just due to internal tensions. Either my intelligence or their leadership style just mismatched. So, but yeah, it was an offer that showed men how to develop the lifestyle, get status. And for those of you guys that know, so big name out there. But yeah, I found my way into that. And in the background, a bunch of chaos and personal things were going on. So like between just, I finished up with high school and hadn't gone to college and was just completely kind of going against the grain of what my parents understood of like, well, you were someone that had a lot of potential and you're not going to college and you're not really killing it as a salesman and you're not really running your own business. Like, what are you doing? And so just that tension was kind of growing and festering in the background prior to, a big falling out where I had a day I accidentally crashed and wrecked my dad's car. And, but I found this offer, I think shortly, I don't know if I'd found that before or after that actually, but I found this offer showing men how to, get themselves the setup in the life. And, that was kind of the first like real breakthrough that I felt like I had. Onboarding with them was painful. They extended the offer and then like a week went by. There was no onboarding, no calls. Another week went by, no onboarding, no calls. I had like kind of cut everything off and I was like hedging my bets on this offer starting. And so I was like, what was I going to do all day? And there was another closer as well that I was meeting with and we were training and like preparing and trying to understand the script and everything about the business. They wouldn't give us access to the product. They got us in the Slack. They wouldn't give us the product. They wouldn't put us on calls. And so me and the other closer had it in us, and there was a setter as well. We had it in us to be like, okay, like we need to get paid or we're bouncing. Like this is ridiculous. I don't know what you guys are doing. And so we wrote we had a team meeting and we just brought it up like, hey, we need some sort of comp. And so I think they slid us all $1,000 or whatnot for our time. We were happy. And then I remember when they opened up the doors for us to go in, man, did we smash it. I think it was we took the offer from 100,000 to 450,000 cash in 30 days because the main closer was stepping back because he had to go back to school. And so there was the two of us and the setter. I was playing a double role. So I was end to end. And yeah, there was just so much tension and anticipation built up prior to that once the door opens, we just snapped and kind of ripped right in. And yeah, that was really fun. But I remember that I always kind of had like a tinge of disdain for the manager, people above me. Thinking about it, I mean, maybe I don't know if I was just like a bad employee or I was thought too much outside of the box, but I've had managers that I get along with, but like when it came to sales, it was always like a pride thing of like, you're not selling the way that we sell, so speak the way that we speak. And I was like, but my stuff is working, and I'm happy, and customers don't complain. It's like, yeah, but it's not our process, so we need to change. So that was a tension that just kind of slowly kind of festered and grew, in working with them. And 0 to 450K was great. I remember the first, like I was doing there was a call booked inbound. There's a 15-minute triage, like an intro. And I remember closing it for a 5K paid in full. And the first response that they gave me was, we don't have a 5K product. We had a 497 product. And so that was the first response. And that's when I kind of knew that I think something was up.
Man, that's whack. That is broken.
Literally. It's just like, boom, 5K came through. They were like, who closed this? And I was like, I responded with emojis, but it's like me with like a smile. And then it's like, what did you sell them? We don't have a 5K product. Like literally, that was the first response. And I was like, oh, I sold them the 497, but I didn't have the link. And I was like, they were like, okay. That was it. So
no, good job, Kaleb.
No,
awesome, great sale.
No, nothing. On the team meeting, they were like, was that an intro call? It's like, yeah. So I was like, you should have booked that for yourself and like closed it. Why did you close it on the intro call? This is what I mean, where it's like, I don't know if I was a bad employee or just I didn't have good management, but like this is the kind of stuff that like I ran into so much during my career. It drove me up an absolute wall. But yeah, but despite all that, this was an offer that was making money. And so I could just kind of put my reservations aside and I was like, screw it. Look, I need the cash. I'd had a 2-week window of not closing, waiting for these guys. And so I was just kind of all in on it. This was also when I was moving from, it was around this time that I was moving from Massachusetts to Texas. I packed up all my stuff in my car and did a road trip and drove down south. I was still on this offer afterwards when I landed in Texas. And yeah, that was a hell of a time. That was a really hell of a time. I think I was there for 4 months, maybe 5 months before things kind of went south. Long story short well, not long story short, but I was running into these tensions with internal management. They were paying for Cole Gordon's team to come in and train us on sales. And so Steve Smartridge, shout out to Steve, you were our trainer on this account. There was me and there was another closer. And the other closer was such a... I don't know. I don't want to cast any bad names. This was the kind of guy that like makes you. This is why people don't take sales calls. Is this kind of guy and how he sold? It's like this is the kind of call you take where you're like, okay, I'm never booking a high ticket sales call again. And I do have to hand it to him. He was a damn good closer. But if you weren't buying that day, you were never speaking to him or another salesperson again, just because of the lines that he would cross and the emotional manipulation to get people to commit. There was a time that we sat there in a training with, me, Steve, and the whole team. We looked at one of my sales calls, and it was good. There wasn't really much for them to critique. And we pull up closer number 2. And there was a moment that I very distinctly that was like, oh, like all of us are kind of like, oh. I can't recall what he said, but it was like, there's no way you just said that to somebody. But I tell this story as a joke for context for the kind of person that this guy was. And if you're watching this, shout out to you. This, as much as he was what he was, it was a character and he was someone that did serve a purpose in my life for that point in time. But he actually helped me find my apartment that I lived in Austin, and he became my next door neighbor. And I signed the lease to move into this place, I didn't realize he was going to be like right across the way. But like I'm talking my apartment, hallway, his apartment, like right across the way. So when we finish up a day, we'd go for a walk or something like that just because he was like a coworker. Did I really admire him and respect him? No, not at all. But like I didn't have any friends in the city. This was the guy that I kind of knew there, and so I just took it for what it was. But I remember one day very distinctly where he like knocks on my door, or yeah, I don't know, he knocks on my door, texts me, finds his way over, and he's like, "Yo, bro. You got any butter?" And I was like, "Yeah, I need to borrow some butter. Do you mind?" And I said, "No, go right ahead. It's in the fridge on the top in the shelf." He opens up my fridge. He's like, "Say, how many of these do you think you'd use or you'd need?" I said, I don't know, probably one. Like I plan to make mac and cheese this week, so I want one for that. So he takes out one stick of butter, puts it in the shelf, and walks out with the other 4. And just shuts the door. Like nothing's wrong with that. Like, how are you going to ask me for butter? Come in my apartment and ask me how many I need and leave with the rest.
Bro, he closed you. There was no joking.
That's what I mean. So it's like he closed so well because all he cared about was himself. And so that's why I think he did such a good job of just going to places because he didn't care. He would pull and pick at any part of you to get you to commit because he wanted the cash and the money, couldn't care less about you. But I don't think it's a good way to live. I knew his story and upbringing was pretty traumatizing. But this is for context, was that. I will never forget that, where he was like, how many of these do you think you need? I don't know. 1? Why? Oh. Puts one out, walks away with the other 4, shuts the door like nothing's wrong. I never spoke about it, never confronted him about it. I just like, okay, I guess. That's what you do. So, yeah.
The question is, how many people's butters have you taken?
Oh, yeah, butter. No, I never asked him for anything. I remember very distinctly, he's the kind of guy that's like day prior, "Hey, bro, yeah, you doing anything tonight?" "No." "Great. I need a ride to the airport at 3 a.m. What? Like I got that corner with that, so I did it. So, but he actually did pay up well on that. I remember I was like, sure. Yeah, and then the time of, I woke up at like 2:30, was knocking on his door. He wasn't even awake. So he's like pounding on his door, and he's like, opens the door. He's like, what's going on? "You have a flight in 30 minutes. "Oh, shoot. Right." It's like, what? You asked me to do this favor for you, and you're not even ready. So he gives me the stories, though. I will say he was worth the comedy. That's for sure. So, but yeah,
I guess, it definitely taught you a level of not caring from the sounds
yeah.
of it.
This was the first time I'd like lived alone, and this guy was my neighbor, and so he just kind of set the benchmark as well. I remember he had his girlfriend as well that lived with him, and so I was like, look, if this guy can have a girlfriend and sustain himself, there's no reason why I wouldn't be able to make it in this world. That was kind of like the conclusion that I had reached. If this guy's managed to get this much, like I can at least compete with that. So, but yeah, I wonder where he's at now. We just kind of fell out of contact, and then I think he found God or something like that. He wrote me, "Hey, bro, remember, he's a different person." Yeah, man, it's all good. Just glad you kind of found yourself out. Cool. Not spoken to him since. So, but yeah, kind of progressing with the sales career in that. I mean, so that offer kind of came to pass. I was planning on leaving that offer, and I was using the company Zoom a lot. Really loved having Zoom Premium. I was recording the meetings and watching the recordings. And I remember talking to my best friend about leaving the account in the Zoom cloud recordings, and I forgot that I'm a participant in a organization's private cloud system. And so one day it got upon them, or might have done something to get under their skin, where they decided to look at my sales calls and they found these meetings. And so they proceeded to watch all of my meetings with my friend, where I told them what I thought about the manager, what I thought about the offer, what I thought about everybody. And I just got a very like hard text from it's like, bro, don't ever, like, you're done, everything's shut off. So I like to say that I walked away from that, but yeah, we very abruptly kind of decided to part ways. And yeah, so that was the end of that. So if you have personal stuff, keep it in your own Zoom, don't put it in the company Zoom.
And how
When I
long
was
were you there for? How long were you on that offer before that happened?
I'd say anywhere from 4 to 6 months, somewhere in that range. 4 to 6 months I was in there for. So that was a really fun period of time. That was really good earnings too that I was making from that. So, but yeah, that was it was a shame, but it was what it was. But that whole world and that offer and what it stood for it's very, I don't know how real it is. It's very superficial. It's a lot of egotism and status. And I got to meet some of the people who had gone further with that program. I'm friends with some of them. Some are even here where I'm at. And there's a very big difference between getting good at mastering the images and the images perception. It's really good. You can master the image perception and elitism, but that doesn't mean that you are a person that is like admirable or respectable. Like perception is reality, where they are, you can look a certain way and have other people, but eventually the layers kind of come down. You'll slowly kind of, the rose tinted glasses will fall off, and like what's really left when all is said and done. So, yeah. That, God, what came next after that? I just remember interviewing for a bunch of stuff, kind of being in a haze. Maybe I think a little bit of offer hopping from here to here to here. And shortly after that, the next like significant thing that I had was that's where I found the sales agency, not the sales agency by Rob Quinn, but I was offered to become a manager for a sales agency. I applied for a closing position, and I remember talking to the guy, and he said, "Oh, actually, with your qualifications, you might be, we're kind of looking for a director or manager. We got this agency, a bunch of different things, it'd be salaried." And so I said, "Sure." And they asked me to send them a recording, be training a bunch of salespeople. For those of you guys who've followed me for a little while, you might know about Persuasion Academy. It's now called Closers into Consultants. I think I just started that at the time, so I had like this little bit of a following of people around me, and I had acquisitions.com. That's what I think I went into selling next, was working for that. I got sold pretty hard into coming and being a part of that team. I really love what it stood for. That was the program that I bought many years prior. So come full circle, 3-4 years later, selling for the thing that you bought. It's pretty ironic. That was also painful, kind of falling out there at the end of that. Just really didn't like what the founder was doing and his choices, who he put his trust in. The people that you trust and people that are competent are two very different things. It's like you can have people that you don't trust that are highly skilled and people that you trust who aren't. And so he preferred the trusted but aren't, as opposed to those who are but weren't. So that was unfortunate. But yeah, I just could not get along with the guy that was the superior above me. And, if you've seen my longer video on my YouTube, I talk about the letter that I wrote to a manager that I found was incompetent. I remember I had a very distinct meeting with him where I was like, "Hey, bro, all respect, but it's like, I believe that you have no idea what you're doing. This is driving me up a wall." A lot of pain and frustration because I was really invested in the offer and trying to get it to work. And I remember they'd stiffed me out of a bonus that I was supposed to get, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back in my mind. After that, I was out. So yeah, but then that led me to finding this sales manager, and I'd never been a sales manager, but I was confident that I could do it. Like I trained enough salespeople to know that like if a manager, I mean, if I just good salespeople don't need to be managed, they just need to trained and inspired. And so long as I keep doing that, then I probably figure it out as a manager. And so I did that. And that hiring process, similar to the other men's coaching, was the same way. I got the job and it was like, okay, we're coming. Yeah, you're in, you're accepted. Just wait here. 1 week turned to 2, 2 weeks turned to 3. I cut everything off and was waiting and was all in on it, and started to like literally go inside. I remember I had like just horrible tension. Like I really couldn't sleep. I was just waiting to get like an email or a response or something about when to start. And then they finally opened it up and let me in. And then I invoiced them because I was an independent contractor. I remember 2 more weeks went by and I hadn't even gotten, like they didn't pay my invoices. And so, but that was so much tension it built that I just exploded in the other direction, where I went in there and I cleaned house. We had 6 different accounts. I was militant. I was trying to prove myself and my value because I wanted to make sure that they were paying these invoices. I kind of overhedged or overleveraged myself, and this thing kind of working out. Kind of a side note or lesson that is like, don't overleverage yourself on things. Keep your risk, keep yourself in abundance. Keep a couple options and opportunities always. Don't be too far, too deep into any one thing, because, yeah, it creates a lot of emotional turmoil and stress, maybe more than I think. For those of you that need that to move, then that's great. But otherwise, keep your abundance, keep your options open. I've only ever gotten a lot of angst and anxiety by being over invested on some things that weren't really producing. So, but sure enough, like 4 weeks, 5 weeks had gone by before I'd seen like an actual paycheck, and I was like draining my savings, and I was like, I don't know if like, I remember saying in my second week, like, hey bro, I've not been paid. And so like, this has been great. Love you guys, but I can't do this unless those get paid. Immediately payment of invoice 1, invoice 2, and then the third week came on time. I could finally like breathe again. And that's when I just went hard, just went beast mode. In that span after having my invoices paid, I don't know if it was my first 30 or 60 days, but I took one of the accounts there from $250,000 to $586,000 in 30 days, with nothing more than just like my sheer tenacity and intensity of like developing reps, running the sales team meetings, and raising and upholding standards. And this agency was getting a 26% of everything. And so I remember that at the end of the month, when came and went process, I messaged them, like the guy that was like my higher up. I was like, hey, our top account, we did 586 this month. He's like, wait, what? Really? I said, my bad. 586, like 700, something like that. And his response wasn't like clarifying. It was like, oh shit, we did what? That much? I remember him being like, beast, pro, beastie. And because this agency was getting 26%. So 586, it was 116,000 those guys brought in, and they were billing on revenue. They weren't billing on cash. So cash that was yet to be collected. Yeah, they were getting paid on cash that wasn't even collected yet. That's how they had worked these deals.
That is insane.
Yep. Yep. And I was on my salary, and I had my bonus at the end of that was a whopping $76. So that was
What was your salary?
That was
what was your salary? Like, you're making huge salaries.
No, they're giving me $90K a year to do this, and with a bonus structure that really didn't make any sense. But I was just kind of enlightened at the fact that like I got to be a manager and get to like be a part of it, and I knew that like this probably won't last forever, but the experience that I get from this, I can compound to the next thing. So, but yeah, I just remember getting my my 7.5 that month, and my $75 after the fact, because they had their own expenses, and so the agency didn't turn that much profit. Lo and behold, bro, these guys would just travel. They were, Cosmin has this term, TIHO. They were that. They were just Ibiza, Ibiza, Playa del Carmen, Cabo San Lucas. It was just bam, 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 Amsterdam, Netherlands. And so...
Well, mate, you had just generated them 160K. They got to travel.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's my life's purpose, I'm waking up. I'm working till 4 a.m. And mind you, this agency was based in Australia, so like my hours were like 2 o'clock to 4 a.m. So I'm just busted, just grinding from 2 to 4 a.m., 2 to 2 a.m. some days. I remember very distinctly that we would have like 4 a.m. manager meets for one of our accounts, and I would just like set my alarm for like 3:55, and I would go to sleep in my clothes, and I would just like, the alarm would go off, I wake up and just flip my studio lights on, have the white wall behind me, and just sit there. I really didn't have much value or insight to give. Sometimes I had input, sometimes I didn't. I was just do that for 30 minutes, get so much ambient LED light in that your circadian rhythm kind of thinks it's daytime, and then just shut them off and proceed to go back to sleep. So, but yeah, I was doing that, and I remember that there's one day I was out at a coffee shop, and I was just thinking about what was going to come next. Like, this was nice. I was kind of recouping cash, and just kind of like, it was nice not needing to take sales calls. It was a different change of cadence, just kind of actually being able to be on above things. I really didn't mind coaching, developing people. I got really good at teaching, coaching, training, and developing sales. And I remember thinking to myself, like, what if I just really squeezed my potential and pushed myself further? Could I do more? And so I really took that to heart. And weeks prior, prior to accepting this offer, I was in Jacob Hopkins' Discord, the devotee of Alex Hormozi, and he had looked at me and interviewed. He extended me an offer to work for one of the portfolio companies, one of the smallest ones there. I turned it down. Egoic me was like, "Oh yeah, bro, just accept this thing with the sales agency, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be great." And I just remember I opened up the Discord and I booked in an interview with the founder for an interview. And I was like, screw it. Let's try it. Would I regret not doing it? Yeah, because it's like, what if I sold during the day and managed during the night and just doubled up my income? What would that be like?
Mm.
So that's what I was like. I gave it a go. I interviewed with him, got the job, said yes, and then 8 a.m. to like 3, 4 o'clock was closing, and then it's a little overlap from 2 to like 2 a.m. or 2 to 4, doing the management. And that was like a 4-month window of doing that. And you don't know how hard you can work until you realize how hard that you can work. That was a period of time that was a little bit destructive in how much I was doing, because to sell is already a bit of it's a drain on the mental and psyche, and then to show up and be a leader for 4 to 6 different info businesses, sales teams, and be like a manager and run the meetings for those was a very different thing. And then to do that to potentially 2 to 4 a.m. and then wake up again at 8, like 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. is a 4-hour window. And I would wake up at 6 a.m., go to the gym, work out. So some days it was like 4 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours of sleep I was just running off of. And also, if you've ever been a manager, one of my good friends right now is going through this. He just became a sales manager for 5 different businesses, sales director, sales manager for an agency, similar to what I was going through. He's like, oh, everything's very reactive right now. When you're in sales, you're already very reactive. You're kind of working on other people's time and their schedule, when they're going to do things and buy things, and just kind of being really accommodating. And looking backwards from like hindsight, everything's clarity. Hindsight, everything's 2020. Looking back at it objectively, I had trained myself to become very reactive, and I really had no ability to think and plan beyond the next day, if even like the next hour. I remember very distinctly, like when that finally came to pass and I transitioned into consulting, that it was a Saturday that I just sat there and I woke up and I was like, I had this nervous, anxious energy running in the back of my mind of like, I have something I need to do. I need to check Slack. I meetings I need to attend. Like, who do I need to follow up with? And I just remember having a breath like, whew, I have nothing. I was like, whoa. I actually don't have anything that like I need to do. And I don't tomorrow either. I can just like get through the day. And that was realized that like, working hard is really great, but you need to have a good network and perspective and objectivity, because, I like to, I've said this a lot on sales calls before, even the line is closing, is like, the money's only as hard to spend as it is to make. And so this is why in BizOp, you have to really move people emotionally sometimes to spend. Because if they've done hourly jobs, when they're spending $2,000, $5,000, they're just thinking 200, 500 hours of their time that boom is going to be gone, that they're never going to get back. They've already spent that time. They got paid for it post-tax. And it trains you to think in a very different way. When you do hourly pay, it trains you to think in terms of your pay per hours and things. And that is the most deadly and destructive thing I think about for someone to go through. Hourly pay isn't bad because of how little you're making. It's bad because of how it trains you to think. It just trains you to think without leverage. And when I was a sales manager, that was the first time that I kind of got to see the impact of, having one good sales team meeting, send a bunch of the troops off, really hyped and inspired. They bring in like 20K, 50K cash that day. And it's like, whoa, I just got to keep giving them that energy, and they bring it back. I give it to them and they go out and bring it back. And so that's just way more than, not the saying that I haven't had 40, 50K days, but I don't think I have had a 40 or 50K day cash. 20K, 21K was like my highest day I think I ever did cash collected. But yeah, that's where, you get to kind of see those concepts of leverage. But I trained myself to think in such a short-term cycle that I just remember kind of unwinding from that. That was after I'd signed my first consulting client. And that was a hell of a time.
And how did that kind of transition? Because like you went from doing two roles at once, right? Managing during nighttime for Australia hours, selling during daytime for the US hours. How did that pivot over to, I'm just going to be consulting now for everyone? I'm not going to be doing any selling. I'm not going to be working for someone else's business. I'm going to come in and I'm going to help these businesses grow. How did that happen?
Well, so in the midst of the chaos of this double work thing that I was doing, I was interviewing a lot of sales reps because I was, we were hiring a lot. And so I had to keep kind of the pipeline full, and I was having the final judgment calls of who was worth having and who wasn't worth having. And there was a guy that I'd met that I passed on, that got hired or picked up for an offer that showed people it was a business buying platform, Deal.ai. It was showing people how to buy and sell business. It was a platform to help people buy and sell businesses. They were trying to do this whole low ticket, high ticket thing. They were having a really hard time getting it up and off the ground. They were selling the product. They weren't selling the product. It was just a mix, few and far between. And I remember he hit me up again saying, hey, bro, I'm on this offer and would love to kind of talk to you about it because I know that you sold this stuff in the past. I said, sure. So I met with him. I gave him my sales script, gave him all the insight, everything that I knew about selling these types of products, because I'd sold it for Raises, I'd sold it for acquisitions.com, and I'd been a cold caller, a deal originator, and all that stuff. So I really knew the industry inside and out from a couple different angles. Bridger Pennington, investment fund secrets, kind of understood it from a couple different perspectives. So I told him a lot of what I knew, and he said, hey, man, and I asked, like, hey, this seems pretty interesting. I'd love to meet with whoever's higher up, offer them some insights too, because if you found this valuable, if they knew this, it'd probably be worthwhile. So that's when I got connected to their manager. And I met with him, and I was trying to see if there was a way that I could kind of come in or be part of it, because this was right up my alley and I was interested. There wasn't. There was a one-to-one skill match as far as like offer that he had, the value that he had, and what I could provide. And so that's where I just kind of gave it its space and time. I gave him the script, and I gave him a 20K, 9.8, 6K, 4K, 2K, and deposit, just call recordings attached to the script of how to sell business buying or mergers and acquisitions. Ping, ping, ping. Somehow that script found its way through the company, through the org, up into, Mr. Mayor, the business owner. And I just remember getting a message from Terry like, hey, Alex would like to speak with you. I was like, sure. And so I got invited into a WhatsApp group chat. And I got, next thing I know, there's a 4-way phone call going on with that sales manager, Alex, the CEO, and like an assistant. And I'm just no idea what's going on. So I was just like, hey, yeah, I know. Terry was the manager. Terry, if you're watching this, shout out to you, you're a G. But yeah, it's like, so yeah, I know Terry. Terry's a pretty cool guy. We spoke briefly. I talked a little bit about business buying and what I could offer. And Alex is a very scientific brained person, former NASA scientist, PhD, sold his first company for $258 million, just really technically math, rationality heavy person. And just a parade of questions of like, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? How'd you do that? What were the numbers? What were the stats? And I was giving him answers as best as I knew. And he was like, how much would you need to become a part of this? And I was like, I put out a number, 20K a month. I was probably doing, between the other stuff I was doing, hovering between like, 8 to like 12, just depend on the month across the two positions. And so, I threw out a number out there, 20, because I was like, look, this guy's got money, so it's like, let me put it something high. If I fall below that, I'll be happy. And so he said, okay. What are you doing Friday? I was like, nothing particular. Really, there wasn't like any free moment that I could take to just be myself. I really took it because I was just so overwhelmed at the time with everything that was going on. It's like, good. You should come to the Vegas and meet me and the team. yeah, you should come to Vegas. I was, sure. He's like, you could do that on Friday. It's like, um, sure. Yeah, I could probably do that on Friday. Great. We'll fly you out. We'll put you in a hotel. Everything will taken care of. It's on the company. I'll have my assistant reach out. She'll coordinate the rest. And I'm just, yeah, sure. I've never been in a situation like this. I never experienced this. So I was just taking it as it came. And if you look at my Instagram, you'll see the stories of when I went out to Vegas briefly. That was that. And sure enough, Friday comes around. I tell the agency in the offer that, hey, I'm going to be MIA this Friday. I need to step away a little bit early. I've got some travel responsibilities. And they brought me out for the weekend. And I remember that Friday, midday, it was a whole day thing. I think I took all of Friday off, honestly, to go out there Friday in the day. I think I went out there. I don't know if it was Thursday in the evening or Friday in the day. I think it was Friday in the day. Midday, I think I flew out there. They got me a JSX flight. For those of you guys that don't know JSX, it's a semi-private jet charter. So there's other high net worth individuals, affluent people on there. You don't have the whole TSA, and they just do things domestically. Their airport security is just taking a strip of wax paper, rubbing it on your bag, and putting it in this machine that will either beep green or red. If it beeps either color, they don't care. It's like, who's going to blow up the plane on JSX? You? It's like, you're the passenger. Like, you don't need security for your own private jet. Who's going to bomb the jet? Me? Yeah, this is my jet. What am I going to do? So, yeah, that was eye-opening. And I remember we waited on him just like in denial of what this is. I was like, okay, so this is happening. And I got invited to dinner, and I was like, okay, we're going to do dinner this evening. Alex will be there. And I remember I arrived a little bit early. His CEO was there. I was kind of chopping up with the CEO, just kind of being charismatic, learning more about him, things of that nature. I was just like really humble. It's like, I don't know. I wasn't trying to impress anybody. I was just there as me. And I think that's one thing that's really important is like, the better you get at sales, the better you get at kind of reading people in EQ. So I wasn't trying to be anything that I wasn't. And whatever they wanted or needed, I would just be helpful. And I was just there. And we had the dinner, and I got to meet Alex, and it was really great kind of getting to be around the team, the culture, and all that. I think he kind of wanted to size up kind of me and myself before he like invested in bringing me in. And I remember very distinctly that like I asked to go to the bathroom. And so I went to the bathroom, and when I was going, I stopped the waiter and I said, hey, our table over there, here's my card. If you could just put the dinner on this card and just pay for it by the time the bill comes, that would be great. Just bring me the receipt after. Try not to make a deal about it. And he's like, well, I have to come with a card reader because you need to pick a tip amount. I was like, what are the tip amounts? You got 15, 18, and 20. I was like, okay, just 15. It was already like a $650 dinner or whatnot. So I had money at the time, but I wasn't like, trying. So anyhow, just like, look, can you pre-select it? Yeah, but you're still going to have to sign. It's like, fine, I will sign it. You can't forge my signature? No. All right. So I gave him my card, and then I come back, and we finished up with our dinner, and then afterwards the check comes, and sure enough, it went in exactly as I wanted. My card was already in. He got it out, handed it to me, asked me to signed it. I got the receipt, and I just remember the reaction that I got from the table. I was like, oh, bro, you didn't have to. We flew you out. You don't have to do that or whatnot. And that might have been the thing that actually was the thing that kind of won some of his trust or his respect for me, was just that. It was something that I'd read in a book, that you should do that. If you're around super affluent or super wealthy people, there's a couple sources. They're so used to paying for everything, and I've kind of fallen into this now where it's like, I'm not super affluent, super wealthy, but it's like, if I take you guys out somewhere, any of my members or people that I meet, it's like, I'll just naturally pay for things. It's just, part of the givingness or nature of me. It just seems like the right thing to do. But to step up and like adamantly insist that you will pay, that is something that I think is admired. And so I did that. Afterwards, when we were walking out from dinner, he turned around and he's like, how much would you need to be a part of this? And once more, I was like, look, I don't know. I'm really happy and content with where I'm at. I was stressed, but like I was comfortable. Like I was doing decent numbers consistently. I had a floor, and I had the agency that was paying me fixed, so I knew that I had money coming in. And then I had the commission-only sales stuff that I was doing that was just like icing on the top. I could live off a little bit less of what the agency was bringing, and then any of the commissions, I was just socking that away in savings. That was money that I wasn't even really touching. And so I was like, it was good. I was happy with that. It's like, look, I could ride that for a while because I hadn't found a setup like that. I know that it will eventually break, so let me just do that. He said, okay. Well, look, go back to your room. I'm going to talk with the team. We're going to make you an offer. And if you like it, you say yes, you join us. If not, well, you're lost. Something like that. It's kind of how it went. And so I went back to my hotel room and was just kind of waiting around, and then eventually got a phone call like an hour later from Terry saying that, you know, they'd offered me 10,000 a month and a $5,000 signing bonus to stop everything that I was doing and go all in. And Alex, I didn't start as like necessarily a sexy consultant, as I kind of like label it and market it now. I think I was an independent contractor, but I was really kind of positioning myself as like, look, all my loyalty, effort, energy, resource, I was fully committed to what this was, and they wanted me to sell as well. And so they asked, how soon could you start taking calls? And I was like, I don't know, Monday. He's like, what about tomorrow? This was Friday, mind you. So I said, sure. Yeah, I could do it tomorrow. Great. Set up his accounts. And so I signed the Panda doc. I got all my accounts set up, and then calls booked on the calendar. I think I closed somebody for a deposit. Was just talking about the calls. They were curious for my insights in it. They were curious for my insights and feedback on what I had going on. That grew into me doing weekly calls and training and being a good like coach and leader inside of that product that they had. For those of you guys that are watching this that know me from Deal, quite a few people know me from Deal. You know, I was the weekly person in there teaching M&A to people on how to buy businesses. A lot of experience. I talked about how to deal with brokers. It's the same 4 questions that you get asked over and over and over again, pretty much. But I really loved it. That was really fun. Prepared trainings pretty much every Wednesday or Thursday on what I need to do. And then from there, because I had a new floor, you know, life changed. Moved down here to Medellin, Colombia. I had enough time on my hands. I kind of found myself out of the closing into just like setter managing and kind of leading, and left the sales stuff to the other kind of sales manager guy there. And we just figured we'd split the roles because that's stuff that he was good at. These are things that I knew how to do that he didn't. And so eventually I just got quite a bit of time back. And so through networking, I found my way into a couple other clients, just started to stack them. And you guys talk about in 2023 when it was, you know, 10,000, 10,000, 20,000, 30, 40, 40, 50, 50. That was like I don't think the math went exactly like that. It was 5 months, pretty much 194,000 in 5 months. I was able to just stack being down here in South America, and then moved into a nicer apartment and kind of transitioned into just the full-time consulting. So yeah.
That's awesome. That is awesome, man. I've never heard the backstory on it, so it's really cool to see kind of how it started. Because, like you said, you know, I think the biggest thing is it's not as sexy as we kind of like to look at it, but at the same time, it's real. It's super real.
Yeah.
Because where you're coming from, you took a bet. You know what I mean? You took a bet on yourself. You took a bet on wanting the future. At the very beginning, when you were 16, right, of being like, fuck this, I got to do something.
Yeah.
And you kind of just continued that throughout your time.
Yeah.
Now, Kaleb, what are you doing these days, and where can someone find you if they want to get help from you?
So these days I'm doing sales consulting for myself to clients, and also creating sales consultants. So for any of you who have seen my ads, Instagram is one of the best places to reach me. Kaleb Y Mccullough, Kaleb, letter Y, Mccullough, all one word. I'm also available on Instagram, on YouTube with Kaleb Mccullough, also on X with Kaleb MC7 or Kaleb, Kaleb YMC. So if you just Google my name, you'll see me rank Kaleb with a K.
We'll have the description below.
Yeah, it'll be in the description below. But yeah, so I actively consult. So, you know, I'm in the process right now of getting a new set of clients to take on with sort of just my own sales consulting, leadership, funnel development, scaling, managing, directing high-ticket sales teams, marketing efforts, and, you know, how to close and making cash. And then I also show people how to do the same. So for those of you guys that are sales guys that really want to master skill development in marketing and leadership and management, so you can take your career further, either as a manager, either as a marketer, as a full-blown consultant, we show you how to do those things inside of sales consulting. So, and if you click on my stuff, follow my links, you'll sure enough find your way there. And you can DM me directly on Instagram. There's not appointment setter. It comes all direct to me. So, yeah.
Well, Kaleb, thank you so much for coming on and telling a little bit about your story. And guys, if anyone is interested in getting out of the grind, the monotonous, if you're feeling like you resonate with Kaleb of getting frustrated with manager after manager, after offer owner after offer owner, this guy can really help point you in a direction to be able to get out of that rat race.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
hit him up if you have any questions.
Right. Well, I also say like a long, for those of you guys that don't know, Liam is actually, your host is actually part of it too. He's got a couple deals himself. So yeah.
100%. Highly recommend. Highly recommend. Well, look, Kaleb, thank you so much for coming on. And Guys, make sure if you're listening, you like, subscribe, and comment. Comment below who you guys want to see on next. Happy to continue to bring you all-stars like Kaleb.
Yeah, sweet. Appreciate it. Liam, you were an incredible host. I really appreciated it.
Cheers, brother. How did you first get introduced to sales?
After a series of attempts that didn't get what I wanted of starting different online businesses, such as dropshipping, even an agency, I'd taken the dollars that I had and invested it into what I felt would kind of be my savings grace, which was a program about buying and selling businesses, mergers and acquisitions. It was the guy that sold me into that took a personal interest or liking to me. I was told by him that all the greats, they started their sales career by doing cold calling. That's what I did, started cold calling. That was kind of like the first offer. Wasn't really an offer. In hindsight, I realized that I was just free labor for a pay-per-lead agency. But I hadn't realized that. I did get paid. I did find a lot of businesses. I got really good at it and I made some money off of it. But it was later after that I eventually found myself into like a real kind of like high ticket